Hello, welcome to the Resilient Africa Week Day 2. My name is Femi Awufala, and we will be going into the second day session where we'll be having 3 live streams today. And our first session will commence shortly, where we'll be discussing the importance of e-commerce in a post-COVID Africa. I will be handing you over now to my co-panelists and other discussants in this session who will deliberate on this issue with us, and will also be able to have your questions at the end and also during the discussion. So please put up your questions on the chat box on YouTube, and we'll be able to answer your questions. Have a good day, and thank you. Over to you, Tosin.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, yeah, it's still morning. Morning, everyone. If you're listening from Nigeria, and maybe good day to anybody else who's listening from a part of the world where it's already afternoon. My name is Tosin Ajose, and I'm the lead advisor at Deal HQ Partners. Deal HQ is an Africa-focused transaction advisory firm out of Lagos, Nigeria. And it's a pleasure for us to be partnering with the African Catalyst to present the e-commerce session at the Resilient Africa Week. Without further ado, I'll just go ahead and introduce my panelists who are going to be doing justice to the topic, how e-commerce will shape a post-COVID Africa. The intention is to talk about not the challenges of COVID, but the opportunities that are bound for Africa and businesses across Africa in a post-COVID Africa. So I'd start by introducing Bunmi Akinyemiju, who is the CEO of the Venture Garden Group. We also have with us Gbenro Dara, who's the CEO of OList.ng. And last but not the least, we have also with us Olayinka Odunbaku, who's the country director for More for Africa, Kenya. You're all welcome. Thank you so much for joining the session. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and talk about what it is that e-commerce is and the opportunities that are bound for Africa after this pandemic is over, and how we can position ourselves as people who are stakeholders in this e-commerce community to benefit immensely from those opportunities. So my first question will be to all my panelists, and we all know that the pandemic has hit all the countries of the world. But one of the benefits that a lot of people have touted as coming out of this pandemic is that it has given a very major lift to e-commerce, especially in Africa. And on account of the pandemic, Africa has now recorded significant growth in the e-commerce market. Many consumers who before now saw e-commerce as either expensive or an exclusive reserve for the elite are a bit more open to adoption of online shopping or other e-commerce solutions that are available, majorly for health and safety reasons, during this period. So my question is, this growth that we see in the e-commerce community, is it a fluke, or do we expect it to last longer than, the pandemic period? Are we expecting to see that this growth is sustained post-COVID Africa? I start with you, Bunmi.
Yes, good day, Tosin, and thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and conversations about e-commerce are very apt at the moment, right? Because all over the world, especially during the lockdown, even people who haven't experienced e-commerce before are now a little more open to it. So globally, some of the biggest beneficiary of this is a company like Amazon, right? So that's sort of the best example that we have, right? And so I think, as we have seen, e-commerce has grown. The question is, that growth, what does it mean to the common person, right? What does it mean to the ecosystem and the value chain around the e-commerce sector? But for me, I think it's here to stay. I think it's here to stay. The way human behavior works, they talk about how to build a new behavior takes, 21 days or something like that. And so after 21 days of, making your first order, second order, fifth order, it arrives safe. Money was not lost along the way. When you need to make a return, it happens. I mean, first time, second time, then all of a sudden, I think people become a champion, right? They change behavior. So for me, I think it's here to stay. I think it is now really about the quality of service to improve. I think it's now really about capital to flow into the sector, so that the required infrastructure can be built. I think it's about entrepreneurs, more entrepreneurs springing up, creating solutions across the whole value chain. So I think as long as the quality is improving, there are more entrepreneurs and more innovation, there's more capital, and government, right? Government creating more ease of doing business type of initiatives to help these digital companies to be able to set up their companies faster, get a license required very fast, be able to move their bikes or trucks or aircrafts, logistics faster. So
Yeah.
I think there's a role for everybody across the ecosystem, because this behavior is here to stay. But if we do not facilitate and fast track those things I'm talking about, then I think you could get a case where people look at, oh, me just going out to shop, myself, or shopping online, and then they go back to the old behavior if you don't see that constant innovation the way that we have seen in different parts of the world.
Okay, thank you so much, Bunmi. Gbenro, what do you think? Do you also think that it's here to stay? And do you think that there are any cultural inhibitions that will not allow this be sustained post-COVID Africa?
I absolutely agree with Bunmi, and thanks, Tosin, for having me. So what COVID has done, I think, has made a lot of users reevaluate priorities, reevaluate their preferences, and over the last couple of months, everyone has reevaluated their need to actually go out and purchase things directly at the shop. It's also heightened some kind of new behavior, especially in Nigeria. Now everyone is more health conscious. So there are now new value propositions that could rise out of safety. For example, now every time I go out to buy anything from the grocery, all the nylons are disposed of immediately. I sanitize every item one after the other. That never happened in the past. That's a new behavior that has been introduced by the COVID virus. So you would see new value propositions being built around these scenarios, not just the one I painted, but there are various scenarios. People now having to work from home. There's a lot of scenarios that sort of have supported this behavior. Also, we've seen significant increase in specific categories. For example, in the health sector, like I said, health, people are looking for specific kind of items. I never knew magnesium tablets was a thing until the COVID virus. Everyone is trying to boost their immunity. So you can see it's a new kind of product that have overnight seen new growth. And as long as this virus remains a reality, you would expect these sectors to remain like that. Also in the home and categories, home and furniture categories. So people now furnishing their houses more set up for home office. So you would expect this category to see sustained growth over time. However, sustainability will depend majorly on the player's ability to deliver continuous value, like
Yeah.
Bunmi said. So if the value of e-commerce is not such that it meets the needs of what the people, of what the users want, it can't be sustained. If I order for an item and it's a wrong item that is being delivered
Yeah.
or multiple times, if I find it hard to return and get my refund, stuff like that will be the limitation, and which has also been part of the limitation over the years in e-commerce adoption. So I believe that its sustainability will depend on merchants, platforms, their ability to actually deliver on the value propositions that they offer.
Okay, thank you so much, Gbenro. Yinka, we would just have your own opinion. I'm hoping that one of you would take a different position on this point. So
Yeah,
Yinka, over to you.
yeah. Thank you, Tosin, and it's my pleasure to be here. I, if you're expecting to get a different position, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Basically, it's it's known. It's a known fact that the pandemic has led to increase in e-commerce activities, and then more people are coming online to make purchase. There's no doubt to that, and I think my co-panelists have said it all in terms of the sustainability and what can help sustain the growth. To take up on where Gbenro left off, I would add one more thing, and that is government now, the government intervention. So mostly some of the hindrances that we that actually I would say limits e-commerce activities in Africa is what I mean are issues that actually affect how e-commerce companies are able to deliver their services, and some of these are like infrastructures that support delivery, infrastructure that support payment system, and all that. And I personally, I believe governments across Africa are beginning to wake up to the new reality that there's income to be made, there's money to be made from the online business as against the traditional way of commodity, physical commodity, and taxing physical commodities only. So, like for instance, the Kenyan government is beginning to look at ways, creative ways to generate revenue from online activities. And then the moment that starts, government will also have to understand the fact that they have to be a player here. And being a player means you have to support that system that you want to tax. So you have to encourage internet penetration, how you want to, ensure proper ID system, because some of these things we will actually need government intervention as much as you want to use technology to solve some of the problems that hinders the growth of e-commerce in Africa. Some of these actually need government intervention. So, like for instance, I mentioned the ID system. That goes a long way to help on issues like payment. And I mean, these are key things that support e-commerce, because e-commerce is not e-commerce without internet, and then without the ability or capability to pay online. So some of this, and then some of this also relies on the government intervention to solve some of these things, because we are not going to provide roads for the e-commerce business are not going to provide roads for themselves, you know. So again, Bunmi mentioned something around ease of access, like ease of company registration and some of these things. So in the nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, so long as the government have started seeing the potential for revenue in the e-commerce space, they will start understanding the need, or they start coming up with the kind of support that is needed. So, this I'm trying to link this with the sustainability. This is in my own view, what I think is going to support sustainability in the long run. We can also talk about the experience. Of course, now this is the role that e-commerce company need to play. We also have to be there. We have to deliver. If we promise, we have to ensure that we are delivering, so that when this customer comes, their first experience will always be a good experience, and so that they can come back, and then we can sustain and experience. I mean, we can experience and sustain the growth in e-commerce.
Okay, thank you so much, Yinka. Before we jump off this point, I mean, what I hear all of you saying is that sustainability will be dependent on user experience, infrastructure, government support, and building trust. That's what I hear you saying. Now, I have another question, and it will be around what your thoughts are. As we grow penetration, do you think that we are going to be growing adoption more from customers that are patronizing African, e-commerce businesses? Or do you think that this growth may likely be more beneficial to e-commerce businesses outside of Africa? Because, I mean, I find that in my personal experience, sometimes I have a better, experience when I shop online abroad than when I do in Nigeria. So what's that? What how do you think that this affects the growth of e-commerce in Africa? Should we be threatened by the Alibabas and the Amazons, or how do we ensure that we convert these opportunities for the e-commerce businesses that are out of Africa? So I would just take 2 minutes each from each of you before we move to the next question. Let me start from Gbenro and then Bunmi and Yinka. Gbenro. Okay, Bunmi, maybe you want to go ahead.
Okay, sure. I think Gbenro's mic might be muted. But I can speak to that a little bit. The truth of the matter is, it's now the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us that it's now a global, play right now, right? So it is not easy to close your borders anymore. What that means is that Alibaba will come, right? Amazon will come, and there's just going to be that open global playing field. The key is that how do we domesticate more of the value chain, right, so that we can capture more of that value locally. So for me, I think that the opportunities are huge, right? So for example, I believe Jumia recently mentioned that they have about 80,000 merchants on their platform, right? Konga, talked about maybe 60,000 merchants on their platform, right? So that's all opportunities to capture some of that value locally, right? So the key though is that, do we have, all those merchants participating? Are they innovating? Do they have the inventory? Do they have the capital? Do they have all the things that they need to be able to partake in that value chain? Now, you also understand that most of what they're selling is imported, right? So at the end of the day, you're only partaking in the distribution leg of it, which is not where really the meat of the value is. So how do we backward integrate so that we're actually producing more of those things locally, right? So who is innovating around that? How is the e-commerce company thinking about, because whatever I manufacture in, maybe Rivers State or Bauchi here should be less expensive than me importing from outside the country. So how do we, and now I have the data. So now I can literally go to all the e-commerce companies and say, how much, toilet roll is being, bought every single day. And then essentially make sure that there are enough entrepreneurs who are creating the manufacturing plant, and there's enough merchants who are selling on this e-commerce site, so I really think that, the onus is on us, as a country, as government, as entrepreneurs, as venture capitalists, to kind of just look at what the data is telling us, especially on the back of the growth that we're seeing right now, to just, innovate. And I think if we do, really some of that value can be captured here, even though the global players will always, be there. But I think that we can capture a lot of that value, by doing some of these things.
Thank you, Bunmi. Gbenro, over to you. 2 minutes, please. Let's keep to 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I think that the issue of how we compete with foreign products would always exist. However, we need to realize that, especially now that Forex, the Nigerian value to the dollar has sort of dropped in recent times. What it has done is has now allowed local goods be more competitive. So before that, dollar was EG 360. It could have been cheaper for you to import some kind of goods. But now, with dollar being 450, 460, it's a bit more expensive and now becomes a bit unrealistic to import some kind of goods. Local producers are then forced to step up their own production game and deliver on improving value in the production of these products. How can we improve value? How can we improve the kind of quality in the products that we're delivering as local manufacturers? That's another question for another day. But the more manufacturing that we're able to do, the more local production that happens, the better we'll get at it. So I think one of the things that has hampered our local production in the past has been the unrealistic value of our local currency to the dollar. So I believe we're going to be forced now. We don't even have a choice with the direction that oil prices are going. And then local manufacturers will be left to sort of just step up their game. So fingers crossed, and we'll see how that processes in the next couple of months.
Thank you so much, Gbenro. Yinka, quickly, please.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
So I'll take a position that what we need to first look at what e-commerce is about and what problem it's actually solving. And I would say basically when you talk about shopping experience or buying online in Africa, and then when you buy online in other parts of the world and the kind of experience you get. So basically, it's about access, right? So customers want to have access to products that they are not able to get maybe physical. E-commerce is all about. If you look at what we do at Mall for Africa, we give access to customers to be able to buy from some of these stores. So now what we have done is to bridge all the gaps. So usually this same customer, this experience that you talk about, the major problem that people experience, payments, logistics and all that, we try to put all that together and give that access. So, and we are also trying to do that the other way around. Bunmi mentioned the fact that it's becoming, it's obvious now that it's a global village. You can stay somewhere and get what you don't, what you are not able to do. So More for Africa, we're also getting into that space where we're giving access to people abroad, like in the West, basically, access to buy from the local merchants in Africa. So the idea is now that local merchants in Africa needs to up their game to ensure that they have standardized product that fits and is able to be sold abroad. So what is happening here is that e-commerce or businesses are putting technology in place to come and solve this problem. It's now up to us to really, show that we have what it takes to be to sell ourselves out there to the rest of the world. So I would still say I would still say the experience will get better. People would understand. Every business now would understand the need to up their game and then ensure that customers get the best experience, regardless of where they are shopping from. Hello.
So much, Yinka. Thank you so much for your contribution, Yinka. So let's talk about building trust. And I'll direct this next question to Gbenro. Pricing is one of the issues that keeps a lot of people from adopting, e-commerce, especially in the African continent. There is a mindset that, purchasing products or procuring services on e-commerce platforms are typically more expensive. And I think, I was in conversation with a friend of mine who has some e-commerce business the other day, and we're talking about the fact that a lot of people from Africa like the idea of bargaining, of being able to knock off a few pennies from the cost of a product. And that in itself is one value that would keep them away from, adoption of e-commerce. So my question to you, Gbenro, is that, people think that that e-commerce deprives the customer of the privilege of bargaining, and that necessarily it's not cheaper than, maybe going to the open market or, attempting to buy products or procure services directly from the service provider or the seller. Do you think that e-commerce is delivering comparable or cheaper product or service pricing in Africa? What's your opinion on that?
So that's a very interesting and, how will I say, tricky question. I'd say it depends on the business model of the e-commerce business or the platform. You will have seen over the past couple of years some businesses who came with a specific go-to-market strategy of deliver low pricing. For example, OPay. You would see, for example, in the ticketing space, some businesses leverage on online as a value proposition to deliver on lower cost prices for tickets like Wakana. So it's not exactly a straightforward yes or no answer, right? I think it depends on the kind of business, especially in the retail. That's where it applies. So, for example, with OList, at OList.ng, what we're doing, our own key model is that we're a marketplace which allows buyers and sellers interact directly. So as much as possible, we try to allow that conversation thrive between the SME owner or that guy who's just selling on the side for a side gig. As much as possible, we try to create a platform that increases, sort of enforces rules that will increase trust, rules that will increase repeat purchase, just to create a solid environment where these interactions can happen. So some platforms do allow bargaining to happen in some kind of way. I would say straight up e-commerce retail platforms may struggle with this, where they are just selling the regular items that you can get easily out there. So it's really a value proposition and the customer segmentation, the customer segment that you are playing. If you are going after the same market or the market that is very, very, very low cost, low price, you've got to figure out a way to deliver a lower cost. If you are going after a market that is very high trust, high time sensitive. You've got to figure a way how to deliver timely deliveries at the costs that will make your business a profitable venture. So it's a bit, I think it's on a case by case basis that person needs to be looked at. Yes, logistics inefficiencies have added a cost comparable to markets like in the US where they have a proper postal system, where overnight delivery is sent seamlessly, where you can just drop an item at your door and it's picked up. This has been done over years and has worked in their own system. They've gotten to a scale where they've reduced the cost, where it makes more sense for you to act from a cost point of view, for you to actually order and get it delivered versus you going to the store. To take a bit of time for us to get there. And like Yinka said, this infrastructure, some businesses have tried to build this infrastructure in the last couple of years, and has been a lot of strain on their capital, on their cash flow, and even on their potential profitability today. So that's been a headache that a lot of players have had to deal with. But now I think everyone has to take a second look at the market and take a second look at their business models and figure a way how to deliver the value proposition to the market. So are you delivering a low-cost value proposition to your users? If so, you've got to collaborate more with logistics platforms, probably the guys who are using APIs where you don't have to send people, which doesn't really rely on labor to deliver your or dispatch your items. You've got to think creatively. If it's a space that it's about delivering high on customer support, on customer service, you've got to figure a way how you deliver high quality, maybe direct contact with your users, just to make sure that they have a seamless and a smooth relationship and use of your platform. So that's what takes that.
Tosin, I think your microphone is muted.
My apologies. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Gbenro. So what I take out of that is, in spite of the boundless opportunities, the players in the e-commerce community in Africa still need to ensure that they are positioned to be competitive with all their other, competition from across, the world. So I think I would like us to talk a bit about enablers and drivers. So we've talked, all of you have touched on some of the challenges that fraught e-commerce in the African market. We've talked about bad road connectivity. I would also mention inefficient postal systems, maybe shortage of warehousing, and other things like that. So I go around each of my panelists one after the other, starting from you, Yinka. What do you think is the most important enabler to the growth of African e-commerce ecosystem? Just 1 minute, because we're just mentioning. We don't really need to.
I would not okay. So there can be one. There are a couple of things that we need to still get right
Okay.
in Africa. But yes, one thing is and I'll say this again, the infrastructural backbone that supports the businesses generally, not just e-commerce. And some of these we've all touched on. And some very key things in terms of how government is ensuring that the policies are there to support this business to bring the best out of them actually, because the truth is the companies, all these the e-commerce companies and any other company in Africa, their ability to bring out the best of service to this customer would also ensure that customers are beginning to trust whatever sector we're talking about. So basically, because there's one big thing I'll say is perception. So when we look at e-commerce, so people think like, oh, like you mentioned earlier, it's expensive, it's not for me, or I can't even trust the product that will be delivered. So just imagine a system where you as a customer, you're guaranteed that an item, if you order some kind of item, if something else comes to you, you have the right to get it back one way or the other, or you're sure that if anything happens to your card that is linked to an online site, you are sure to get a refund or you get your money back and all that. So this kind of changes the perception, make people more comfortable to want to use the system. So I would definitely say government policy, government focus on in that sector, and government policy to support it will really go a long way.
Okay, okay. Bunmi.
Yes, I would latch on to what you were talking about earlier about trust, right? Like building trust and perception is the key to unlocking the opportunities. And so, what are the maybe three things I would say that are required? I would say one is that digital payments infrastructure, right? That the richness and the quality of and the stability of that digital and how ubiquitous it is, I think is like number one, in no particular order. Number two, I would say the user experience, right? Making sure the user experience is just like, flawless, it's ubiquitous, whether it's on the web, whether it's on mobile, whether it's on USSD, whether it's agent based, whether it's like, how do you make, that e-commerce user experience flawless? Like you talked about, people want to haggle, for example. How do you build a digital version of haggling in an open marketplace? Like that is what we should really be thinking about from a local context standpoint. So I think that's key. And then the third one I will say is just digital skills, the education and the entrepreneurship, right? Because that's where innovation begins. So how do you kind of go back to the roots to make sure that we have the capacity, the capabilities, the STEM education, the research, et cetera, so that we are building the right technology for the local environment? I think those are three things that I believe could unlock exponential opportunities.
Okay. Gbenro, please, 1 minute. Let's try to keep to 1 minute.
Yes. Similar to Bunmi's response, but kind of from a different approach. My first question would be: what is it that the product or your business is sort of built to deliver to the user? What is the job that your users are hiring your product to do? If you are able to deliver on that ruthlessly, your users will trust you and they will sort of gravitate naturally to your product and away from competitors. So it has to start from a point of identifying top three things that your users are hiring your product for, and figure out a way to set up your operations to deliver those things ruthlessly. And also, that comes with a lot of monitoring and tracking and close user feedback, user engagement. So I think that's the way to develop trust for any kind of business, any kind of e-commerce product in a nutshell, in sort of a generalistic way.
Okay, so before we go on, let me just mention that for our participants, please keep your questions coming on the live chat platforms. At some point in the course of the conversations, we will take a couple of questions. So please, I'm already seeing some questions, coming in, but keep the questions coming in, and we will take them just before we wrap up the session. Thank you. Bunmi, let's delve a little bit more on payment systems. So the level of digital payment penetration in Africa remains painfully low. And I think earlier in your conversation, you had mentioned, something about, that being one of the factors that would enable, the growth of e-commerce in Africa. So my question is, what can we do across the continent to ensure that the interrelationship with e-commerce and digital payments are straightened out, and that the payment systems continue to enable us to have a seamless experience when it comes to e-commerce? In Nigeria, for instance, I know that we still have a lot of e-commerce customers insisting that they want to pay cash at the point of delivery. And I think this just creates, a major complication to the whole structure of e-commerce businesses. So what can we do to ensure that, digital penetration is enhanced, that the experience of customers when they try to use digital payment platforms are, good and seamly, and that, at some point would then begin to have, this perfect marriage between the digital payment systems and e-commerce?
Yeah, thanks, Tosin, for that question. And I think really we have a big opportunity here, right? And I keep going back to what I said earlier, that the answer is really in entrepreneurship, in innovation, in capital, actually moving to support this innovation and these entrepreneurs and everything. At Venture Garden Group, Greenhouse Capital, right? We back companies, right? We create some products on the Venture Garden Group side. On the Greenhouse Capital side, we invest in companies. We've invested in 20 different companies. And I'll say the opportunity around the value chain is just huge to really solve that. Now, for me, I like to think about it like you need to meet the customers where they are, right? So instead of saying, hey, customers, you need to pay with a card, you have to kind of start saying, how do I meet them where they are and take the cash, and then begin to use innovation to essentially move them over, right? So, for example, what kind of innovation is happening in agency banking, right? The premise behind agency banking is the ability to be able to take cash, right, and be able to digitize it. So, if the delivery person is also an agent, potentially, it means you have actually used innovation to create an opportunity to convert that. Okay, now let's look at mobile money. The mobile money license allows you to create a digital wallet. So the first time that the customer gives you cash, you could just say, hey, Oga, what's your phone number? Collect the phone number, create a digital wallet, send them an SMS, and maybe they can transact now over USSD from there. Again, it may only be 30% of the people that adopt and migrate with you, but you've made a dent, right? So we're invested in a company called eSettlement. That's an agency banking company. We're about to invest in a company called Wallets.ng, right? And Wallets.ng creates this, mobile wallets and things like that. We're looking at an escrow company, right? So can you create escrow? Because the person who is not using their card because they're afraid is because they're not sure that they'll get the kind of good that they want, or that you will honor your return policy. So they're like, so I think all of these things kind of interlink. So can there be an escrow company, right? And if there's an escrow company, I'm sure more for Africa, OList, Conga, everybody will, come onto it, and you're kind of bridging the gap in trust. And the more you bridge the gap in trust, I think the more e-commerce, will scale. Opportunities around identity, solve the problem around identity, so that solve the problems around logistics. So I just think that there's so many problems across the value chain, but the opportunity is huge. The opportunity is huge, and I think we just need to continue to innovate, continue to collaborate, and the opportunity is here to be unlocked.
Thank you so much, Bunmi. Thank you for that insightful contribution. It will be impossible for us to advance the conversations without touching on e-commerce and the growth of small and medium-scale businesses in Africa. So e-commerce is credited for about 15% of global trade, and small and medium-scale businesses are expected to be the major drivers or beneficiaries of the growth of e-commerce in Africa. How will e-commerce actually deliver the growth of SMEs in Africa? What should the expectations from e-commerce be? And at what point will we know that we are there, where e-commerce would position African SMEs for the growth that their competitors in other continents and across the world, are able to enjoy? So I'll start with Yinka. So this is directed to Yinka.
All right. Thank you very much, Tosin, for this question. And the issue around the growth of SMEs and how e-commerce is going to get into the space and help to support, I would say, the growth. I think it stems from the point of view that most of the SMEs in Africa are either lacking in one area or the other. So bringing technology, adding technology to what they already do, will go a long way to help them achieve this growth. So how I'm looking at it is that it's usually very hard for most of the SMEs to pull together all the value chain across e-commerce and then be able to concentrate on their business. So imagine I have to deal with payment, I have to deal with logistics, I also have to then on top of the fact that I have to think about the growth of my business, I have to think about how to deliver value and all that. So the whole idea is that whilst these SMEs are already doing what they can do at their best, they need like a lift. They need like a lift. And then I think if e-commerce is able to come into if any if entrepreneurs, the technology and the tech entrepreneurs are able to come into this space and provide certain solution to support these businesses, I think we'll start to see growth. And one of this is what we have created at Mall for Africa, and that is what we call the marketplaceafrica.com. It's a proprietary software that we have built to help solve this. So as an SME, what you just need to focus on is how to grow your business, how to build an amazing product to sell to your customer. Then leave the rest of the headache to Mall for Africa to handle. And we will not only be creating a platform for you to sell to your local market, we are creating a platform for you to be able to sell to the world, basically. So you don't have to worry about the payment, you don't have to worry about the logistics. We're partnered with DHL to ensure that all you have to do is list your product, and we at Mall for Africa will market your product for you. We ensure that you don't have to worry about payment and delivery, and we aggregate all that and make sure that we are creating this exposure. So an issue came up earlier. We talked about how the world is now a global village, and then you are not thinking about, as an SME, you're not thinking about just selling to your local market. You're also focus on creating a bigger market for you to access. So basically, so how I see this, and I believe a lot of players are coming into the space to solve some of the problem along the value chain of delivery an efficient e-commerce service. So basically, I think how e-commerce would really come in to help grow that SME, especially in Africa, is by providing that support that is needed, that much support that is needed for the e-commerce, for the SME businesses to grow, in addition to what they've been doing before.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Yinka. So, Gbenro, from what I heard Yinka say, it looks like the relationship between small businesses or small and medium scale enterprises and the owners or the owners of e-commerce platform has to be beyond just creating an enabling platform for SMEs to list or sell their products. So at what point are we going to begin to see e-commerce platforms actually doing, incubation programs, training and support for small scale businesses? And also, at what point are we going to see, that kind of relationship where the e-commerce platforms are feeding the small and medium scale businesses with the needed data for them to actually tailor their service or their products towards what the market actually wants? What do you
Yes.
think that these e-commerce platforms should actually be doing?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think the players need to look beyond short term and look at the entire ecosystem, and sort of make sure that we're not just leaving our merchants in the middle of transactions, but long term, we're sort of educating them and trying to change both seller and buyer behaviors. That's one of the interesting things of our model at OList. We're backed by, we're owned, actually it's 100% owned by Opera Software, which owns the Opera Mini, the Opera browser, and it's owned by by CEO who's very, very, very bullish about empowerment, economic growth of SMEs in Africa. And we've taken this approach from both sides of the marketplace, both from the user and on the seller side. So we're both educating users and also educating sellers. In the last 1 year, we've hired more than 1,000 people, agents, directly engaging and training sellers across Nigeria just for this purpose. And such things are at scale are very expensive. We see this as the investment that we needed to make into the market for the long term, both to educate the sellers and both to educate the buyers. So I agree that one has to look at the entire ecosystem. Some other things that could be done is, for example, in the real estate space, one of the things we've done is organize a lot of trainings through one of our sub-companies called OList. And so I think everybody just has to look at various ways, not just short term, look at long term, how we can grow the market, grow education for both the users and the sellers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gbenro. So back to you, Bunmi. Can you tell us, in your own opinion, what kind of skills you think that the African entrepreneur needs to acquire to benefit fully from the dividends of e-commerce and global market penetration? What kind of skills does the post-COVID entrepreneur need to have to be able to be better positioned to earn, the benefits of the growth that is anticipated in the e-commerce marketplace post-COVID?
Yes, thanks, Tosin. I think that there's so many different skills that people need to acquire, and it's not just one. The key thing is for you to know your area of strength and capitalize on it. So, for example, if you're an engineer, right? So, how do you make sure that you are up to date on the right languages, programming languages, and the cloud infrastructure? So, I'll say, investing time on AWS type of skills, right? So DevOps skills, Azure, Google Cloud, and those types of things. There's a huge opportunity there. Just because, years ago, 10 years ago, it might take you 3 months to build a product or an app. These days you can do it in 2 months. The difference is, do you know how to leverage the services that exist already? So that's on one side. If you're an engineer, if you are a product manager, you have aspirations to be a product manager. We also need way more product managers that we want. To me, actually, that is the skill that is in the highest demand in my mind, right? So if I have a child today, I'll be saying maybe you should be a product manager. If you have a child that's thinking about career, right? Because a product manager, must build this discipline around engaging the customer, design thinking, right? Saying, what does the customer want, and how do I make sure that we're actually delivering a solution to meet that customer need? As simple as that sounds, it's actually one of the hardest part of innovation. So that's the second area that I think is in high demand, right? The third one I'll talk about is data analytics, right? Data analytics, because I like the point you made earlier, right? What's the relationship between this platform, this e-commerce platforms, and the different merchants and small businesses supporting them? How are you curating that data, and what is that data telling you? Data is always, especially high velocity data, right? Jumia had I think 11 million visits in May. That 11 million visits, right? What is that telling you? Where are they coming from? What are they searching for? What is their preference? What's the price point, etc., etc. The skills to harness that data and crunch that data and put it in our language or Python or whatever, to be able to draw out insights, then collaborate with your merchants to say, hey, how do we serve the customer better? Collaborate even with manufacturers and say, hey, this thing is in high demand. If the price moves from $5 to $3 because we've, produced it locally, all of a sudden the scale of volume and demand is going to triple, right? So the skill to actually make that determination and grow the pie, I think all of those things are kind of, missing. And fundamentally, the last point I'll make is just the general skills in terms of just entrepreneurship. We need more entrepreneurs, and that is what we do, right? We back entrepreneurs, we invest in entrepreneurs. Like all these products that I mentioned and companies I mentioned, they're just people that we meet and we think that, the entrepreneurs are sound. We think that they're solving a very important problem, and they ask for capital, $100,000, $500,000, and we back them because we see that the potential is there. So I think there needs to be a lot more venture capitalists in this space. There needs to be a lot more entrepreneurs, and there needs to be a lot more of these digital skills that we build.
Thank you, Bunmi. So we really need to wrap up. It's been such an interesting conversation. I haven't even noticed that we are completely out of time, but I want to give each of you the opportunity to wrap up. And I'm going to be asking 2 questions as we wrap up. So the first one is, how do we build trust with the consumer in the African e-commerce community? How do we build trust? That's one. And then the second question is, what is your definition of a resilient entrepreneur in the e-commerce space? What do you want to see in that resilient entrepreneur, especially as we go into, we map our way out of this pandemic into a post-COVID Africa where we have all agreed that, there will be boundless opportunities, especially, for players in the e-commerce space. So I'll start with you, Yinka, and then we go to Bunmi, and then Gbenro would finally, give us his opinion on this. And then we take questions from the participants across the platforms.
Okay, thank you.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tosin. So the issue of trust, I think is dependent on the other issue you have raised, the resilience of businesses, the e-commerce businesses. So what exactly are we doing to ensure that we put the customers first, so that whatever it is that we are promised to deliver is what we are delivering. So that's where the issue of trust, because like you said, people just want to be confident that when they go online, put their details online, try to look for something they want to buy, they are getting exactly what they are requested for. So what I'll say basically is that it's more onto the businesses, the e-commerce businesses, basically, to put out their best to ensure that we are delivering as we are promised the customer. So I think in the area of trust and perception, that's very key. It's more up to what the e-commerce companies or businesses are doing out there to ensure that we are delivering exactly what has been requested of us. So yeah, that's just my point of view in that area.
Okay, Bunmi.
Yes, thank you, Tosin. My answer to that, I think, is, as we try to build trust, I agree with Yinka. It's really about the predictability of the service. So if a customer places an order and it says that it's going to be delivered in 8 hours or in 1 day, that it is 1 day. If the return policy says that, if you don't like it and you return it in 3 days, we'll give you a replacement in 24 hours, then we do that. So I think that's on the e-commerce platform company side, which then means that they need to be in control and have some elements of predictability across their value chain, their delivery partners, their payment partners, everything needs to be as predictable as possible. And that is what builds trust. on resilience, I really think that resilience in entrepreneurs is like the number one thing that we look at, right? So in companies that we back, in entrepreneurs that we back, the number one thing that we look at is resilience, right? So resilience and integrity. So resilience just means that this is Africa, right? So you're going to fail 10 times before you make it the 11th time. Are you going to give up after time number 4, right? So, and then do you realize that agility is required, right? So resilience also requires agility, where you keep trying. If you're releasing a new product, you're doing your A/B testing. Is this what customers want, or is this what they want? And then is this what they want? And then it's also data driven. What's the data telling you, right? So you have your thesis. You might have your thesis that, oh, the world needs a new digital escrow service, right? And the market size is $1 billion. Now, what does that mean? So can you now zone it down into a very small thing and design your MVP and use it to test the market? And if it doesn't work, can you pivot it a little bit until you get it right? So for me, resilience is very, very, very critical, a very critical trait, especially in a market like in Africa, where you just don't have the public data out there to use to validate your thought. So it means that you need to jump into the market, go and test it, and stay at it, keep pivoting in an agile way until you get it right.
Thank you so much, Bunmi. So over to you, Gbenro.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting time for every business who is already online, and perfect time for those who are not yet online to actually get online. However, it's important that businesses sort of review the underlying fundamentals of their business. E-commerce, online platforms, it's not the actual business itself. It's an enabler that's either solving distribution or payment. But there are the underlying businesses, and that's what we try and teach our own sellers and the merchants on our platform, that your underlying business has to have sound fundamentals for e-commerce or for online marketplaces to make sense for you from a partnership point of view. So I think that's one opportunity that everybody needs to look at, and that will help the sustainability. Also, I think that they also need to look at the customers that they acquire as not one-off transactions, but a lifetime relationship, and actually try and deliver value to them over that entire lifetime. That's where the most of the value is in e-commerce. The ability to get your customers to purchase over and over and over again. So I think that this is a huge opportunity for all SMEs, all businesses who are online, to review how they are engaging their users over the entire lifetime of their product usage, re-engaging them over and over again, just to make sure that they are actually receiving value from that product that we're delivering. So yes, I think that's how to deliver sustainable value going forward. And that's one thing that we're working on with our partners, our SME partners, to ensure that their underlying business fundamentals are solid, and also that they are very customer service driven, to ensure that long term, over the lifetime of the customers that we acquire for them, that they're happy to deal with them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gbenro. Thank you so much. So we will take a few questions. We have quite a number that is being pasted on our live chats, and we won't be able to take every one of them. I apologize. There are quite a number of them, but we will just speak about 3. And the first question from Dr. Simon Ajeniya is directed at Bunmi. He says, while local production sounds great, the issue of competitiveness remains too. I think there's an error there. Will that backward integration not create a glut of some sort in the market. So I guess he's talking about if everybody in local production begins to backward integrate, would we not get to a point where there will be a glut in the market? Bunmi, this question is directed to you from Dapo Simon Ajeniya.
Sure. Hi, Dapo. Very simple answer, and the answer lies in data. It's data. So you're not going to go into local production on something just blindly and just like massively. The data is talking to you, right? And that's why I mentioned earlier that we need to develop the skills to be able to interpret data, machine learning, our language, artificial intelligence, database architectures, cloud, Amazon, Google, Azure, those types of things. Once we have those skills, the data is talking to us. I mean, it's really, we have 169 million mobile phones, right? In Nigeria. I just mentioned earlier, we have 11 million visits to Jumia, in May alone. All the social media, right? How many Instagram sellers do we have out there? People who are selling shoes or socks or hats or glasses, on Instagram. So I think if one has access to a lot of that data, and then you use that data to say, where do you have the assets locally to be able to manufacture and produce, and then replace the importing, you just essentially grow the market, right? You grow the market in an exponential way. And by the way, these are things that you could never do before offline, because you just can't get that data. So the benefit of all these online systems is you actually have access to the data, and then I think you are going to just be very strategic in how you backward integrate.
Okay, thank you so very much. The second question we'll be taking is from Wolfgang Karg. I think he's logged in from Germany, and his question is directed to Yinka. He says, hello, is Mall for Africa going to compete with Amazon and Alibaba in Africa, or will they be cooperating with them?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Appreciate that. So basically, what we have done at Mall for Africa is to create a business by African for Africans. So the idea is to bring together, understanding our challenges and then bringing together what is needed to deliver efficiently to our customers, to African customers, basically. So what I can say is that we see ourselves as more of cooperating to ensure this efficient service delivery as against competing. So at the moment, Amazon is one of our biggest merchants on the Mall for Africa platform. And then we actually collaborate at the moment we collaborate, we share data, we do a lot of things at the back end to ensure that Amazon products are currently being delivered to customers across Africa. So to answer your question, I would say we will be collaborating more to ensure efficient service delivery as against competing. So because if you look at the way we are set up to actually have we are like a mall. We're basically a virtual mall that allows online businesses. We pull all of them together, so you can actually buy from Amazon and Alibaba and put in one cart, and then have those items delivered to you. So we are an integrator. We create this ecosystem that ensure that all these online businesses are in one place, and then you can just look through it and then get all you need to do and put everything in one basket. So if you the short answer will be that we will collaborate more as against competing with this brand.
Thank you. So I'll direct the next question to Gbenro. So we have Adewale Omojowo who's asking, could there be any relationship between e-commerce and healthcare? And yes, and if yes, how can that be scaled up? Gbenro, over to you from Adewale Omojowo.
Yes, of course. Every segment of the economy can be enabled, can be empowered, can be scaled better with e-commerce in various ways. Discovery is one way. Payments, like we had talked about earlier, is one way. So I think for various players in the market, they need to determine where, in what areas will e-commerce help them to create competitive advantages. Not just e-commerce for the sake of e-commerce, not just online for the sake of online. So each player needs to look at how can uh, online tools, technology tools help my health business. There are some players already in the market that are using innovative ways to help to scale health services even better, especially now in time of COVID. We've seen telemedicine platforms. We've seen pharmaceutical delivery platforms even see a lot of growth. So I think it's the question has to be what do you want e-commerce to deliver for you, to solve for you as a business, or what's the competitive advantage that you want e-commerce to help you create. That will be a good starting point for you to be able to innovate well in the healthcare space.
Okay, thank you so much, Gbenro. I'm just going to read one of the comments that we have on the platform, and then I have a question that I would direct to Yinka, and then we will have to wrap up the session. I apologize that we're not able to take all the questions, but we are almost completely out of time. So one of our participants has said that e-commerce companies should introduce a discussion chat box where customers can chat with the suppliers directly in order to boost trust before buying, just as on AliExpress. I actually think that there are quite a number of e-commerce platforms in Africa that have these features on their sites. I believe so. I don't know whether Gbenro just wants to say something quickly, and then Yinka, before I ask my question. Before I ask Yinka my question. Gbenro, just 1 minute.
Absolutely, you're right, Tosin. Yes, you're absolutely right, Tosin. There are a couple of platforms that already have such features. So on OList, you can chat directly with sellers, merchants, if you like, on the platform or off the platform. However, I mean, it's something for us to also think of as platform managers and owners on how to make such functions more prominent and drive more awareness about such functions in the market. So it might not necessarily be the approach for every online platform. Not every platform wants to allow direct interaction between the merchants. But in our case, that's one of our key unique value propositions, that you can actually interact directly with the seller and be the judge if you can actually trust to buy or use the seller service.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so to my own question, Yinka, I had a personal experience earlier in the year, and I'm directing this to you because, of course, I know that you deal with purchases and shipments from different parts of the world, and you deliver them to your customers across Africa. So I had a personal experience once when I was trying to, I bought something on an e-commerce platform overseas, and I was, trying to bring this product to Nigeria. I was slammed with import duty that was almost the same price with the product I was buying. Can you just maybe provide some clarity around how this import duty thing works? Because sometimes you don't even understand, and the bill is just pushed to you, particularly if you're dealing with a platform that is overseas. They just tell you, oh, we don't know anything about the way this works in your country, blah, blah. This is the duty, that has been assessed on this product, and you just have to pay. Otherwise, you don't get your product. And most of the time, it's already maybe in the post office locally, or what have you, and you've paid, so you cannot even cancel the order. So how does this whole tax thing work, especially when you are purchasing from overseas?
Okay, so if I start to, I don't know if I should start explaining taxation and all the components and everything that you need to know. But I'm sure we don't have the time to start saying that, but to start discussing that now. But yeah, so what I can say on a high level is that when it comes to taxes, especially tax administration in Africa, things are a bit not where they should be. Let me say that, and then having to do it personally, like interacting with our customs across border, because this is what we experience, is one challenge, one big area that we understood then that hey, it will be critical if we're able to solve all this. So what we've done at More for Africa, for instance, is to ensure that we put professionals behind this, and then we are able to use extensive data to come up with an amazing taxing system, such that before you check out, before you even decide to make payment, you can see ahead what you're going to pay in taxes, and then you can make that decision. And after paying your taxes, you don't have to do anything. So, I mean, to go, I don't want to dabble too much into the tax administration part of it, but what I can say is that if you, yeah, so if you, I know very well, and this happens across Africa, this is my experience, is that then if you have to do it on your own, if you compare if you compare having to do it on your own as against living into an institution like ours to help you, represent you in area of solving issues of taxation, I think it's a bit more cumbersome. One way or the other, you kind of experience some kind of gridlock if you have to do it on your own. And again, this is what we are solving. If you're talking about this foreign merchant, they don't know how it works in Africa. We know that we put people in place to ensure that we are doing that efficiently. So you don't have to worry about what they don't know. We know these things. So come to More for Africa. We put all this together. Before you check out, you can see what it costs. And then, it's just a click and you have your product delivered to you.
So is it possible to say that maybe this is one government policy that is trying to enable, promotion of local products and create a barrier to maybe purchasing goods and services from overseas? Could it be?
So basically, the way what I'll say in that regard is that customers want to consume goods, right? And if you need to consume, and then the government is taxing it, it doesn't necessarily prohibit that purchase. If you really need to get that item, I think it's just imposing certain constraints or limiting your ability to consume a good. So yes, I understand that governments across Africa are imposing taxes to help local businesses. But again, how are these governments encouraging the local businesses to give you the service? Because the truth is, in the long run, I mean, to provide this product, because the truth is, in the long run, you need to. So let me just put it into perspective. If you're in Nigeria and then you need this glass cup, and you can have access to it, and I'm in Kenya or I'm in the UK, for instance, and I can do this. So we're talking about quality of life. We're talking about, and this is part of the things that the governments are there for. So our government really encouraging the local merchants or local producer or local manufacturer to ensure that they give you, they provide this, they're able to make these products available. So long as these are not this kind of support are not there, I don't think it's necessary for government to start using taxation as, I mean, tax is a growth policy as against a limiting policy.
It's not a penal one,
so
yes.
It's not necessarily a penal policy. So that's the way I would frame this.
Okay. Thank you so much, Olayinka. Thank you, Bunmi. Thank you, Gbenro, Dara. It's been a very interesting time. And I must say thank you to all our participants across all the platforms. Thank you for making the time to join the conversations. Thank you for the very engaging comments and questions that you all sent through. I think we are almost completely out of time now. We need to make room for the next panel session to start. Thank you so much for being a part of the Resilient Africa Week. It's been my pleasure hosting this panel session. Again, my name is Tosin Ajose. I'm lead advisor at Deal HU Partner. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a very beautiful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tosin.
Thank you.
Thank you.